ice sheets melting and polar bears standing on a little bit of ice and ready to fall in the water and no place to go. You spent quite a bit of time laying it out, but I was wondering if you could brief us. I understand that there's 14 million square kilometers of Antarctica. So when we speak of Antarctica, the part that is losing ice is in the northern peninsula. Can you talk about that? Because what we see are only little glimpses of whatever we get on videos or television or something on YouTube.
Well, Antarctica is an immense continent, and it's also an inaccessible continent. There's very little of it that has been explored. There's very little of it that provides us with measurements. We can know a little bit about the fringes, but there's only one way to know what is happening over the expanse of Antarctica, and that is with satellite measurements. So satellite measurements started to be taken a few decades ago to see if Antarctica is thickening or if it's melting, thinning. Well, what the satellite data shows is that parts of Antarctica are thickening, parts are thinning. Overall, Antarctica is thickening. So it's accumulating ice. It's not melting. It's not leading to a rising of the oceans. In fact, just the opposite. To the extent that it's thickening, it's drawing water from the oceans. So by the only measurement that really has any kind of validity, large-scale validity, Antarctica is not at all melting. It's true that in some parts there's calving that's going on. Ice is falling into the ocean, large amounts of ice, but this is part of a natural process that's always happened. Parts of Antarctica expand, other parts recede. These days, it has been expanding.
Why are we hearing that the ice caps are melting?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's not because of the data.
Okay. And what about Greenland?
Well, Greenland has also been experiencing the great variations that we've seen. You know, Greenland was once entirely covered in ice. Then, around 1,000 years ago, there was a great warming period. It was called the medieval warm period. During that period, the Earth was probably warmer than it is today. That was a period of great flowering. It was a period when prosperity increased, lifespans increased enormously, agriculture improved. This is throughout Europe and also in Greenland. It was at that time that the Vikings settled Greenland. Agricultural colonies were set up there. It became a place that became very habitable. So the notion that the variations that we're experiencing now are anything outside human experience just doesn't correspond with the historical records.
We're going to move to the subject of the deniers itself. Anybody who's a denier is associated with what?
The term comes from Holocaust deniers, from people who denied that the Nazi Holocaust occurred, and it's a way of discrediting people who disagree with the global warming orthodoxy, to discrediting them as loons of some kind, in the same way that people who don't believe that the Nazi Holocaust occurred.
In my experience, just covering this subject, and I've done about maybe 12, this will be the 13th show, on different aspects like spokes of a wheel, There is tremendous dogma in this arena. Tremendous when you move outside of the pure data and scientific synthesis of things. It's hugely dogmatic, almost religious. I'm a person who believed in it as reality, never rolled up my sleeves to look inside the different aspects of it, was convinced and really sold from seeing an inconvenient truth and reading the book. Sold. Unchecked. I didn't verify. I just believed. And when I had the wake-up call was when I began to do an inquiry on this show, and I cover a lot of subjects on this show. I was shocked at the level of propaganda and how science has become, or maybe it's always been, we just didn't know it, how heavily politicized it is. And I'm so sad about science, and I'm wondering, do you think there's hope for science? And if so, on a funding level, what do you see for science if the popular view is this translation of what's happening on planet Earth? How are scientists going to be empowered to do their work and stay free and clear of political, I'm going to say, interference?
Well, this probably is a low point for science. I think there has always been manipulation of science and pressure and peer pressure. So a lot of what we see in the global warming science, I think on a smaller scale, has existed in the past. It does seem to me, though, to be off the charts now, the extent to which science has been politicized. But the answer to me is to remove the politicization. There's far too much funding going into the global warming science. The U.S. alone has provided something like $80 billion over the last 20 years to global warming science. The fact that there is so much money available in this area means that other areas of inquiry, of scientific inquiry, have been starved for funds. We need to scale this back dramatically, and if we do that, and also if we develop mechanisms to have funding come less from government and more from arm's length institutions, I think we will be much better off.
Why do you think it is that people that are not endorsing whatever the official story is about what's happening with climate are being forced to go along? Why do you think it is that more people don't stand up knowing that they won't be funded, but standing up to support truth in science? Do you think it's because that individuals lack internal faith that the funding may come from somewhere else?
Well, I think that there are a variety of reasons. One is that scientists aren't all scrappy. A lot of scientists they're nerds. They want to do their work. They don't really care about politics. They just want to be left alone. They might be interested in a particular pursuit, and often what they're able to do is to rewrite their funding proposal to give it a global warming slant, and then they'll get some funding for it, and they'll be able to do their work and get the results that they want. If the results aren't politically correct, they can write their conclusions in a way that hides the fact that it's not politically correct. So we get a lot of science that actually disputes the conventional wisdom, but it's written in such a way that it's just not clear. The information is fudged. So I think a lot of it just deals with the disposition of scientists. People often go into science because it's an area they love, and it's got nothing to do with public policy. It's got nothing to do with politics. It's simply a private concern. In other cases, scientists are fearful of losing funding, so they will compromise their beliefs. Scientists have families